And Kenya Airways is the largest airline in Kenya. The company was founded in 1977 after the dissolution of East African Airways. The carrier's head office is located in Mbagazi, Nairobi, with its hub at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. The Kenyan government owns 30% of the company and Air France KLM owns 27%. It has a market cap of about 820 million rand, a PE of 4 and a dividend yield of 2.6%. We know that we can't really get into Kenya Airways here in South Africa, but when you look at Kenya Airways and its operations on the African continent, what do you make of it, Chris?
I think this is a brilliant operation, and you can see what's happened to Kenya Airways in the past few years since the privatization or the partial privatization. It's really gone forward at a tremendous rate of knots. I heard the CEO on the radio a couple of months ago talking about doubling the fleet size in the next 5 years. If that's the case, this will be a significantly bigger operator than SAA. And the nice thing about Kenya is that it's strategically far better placed than South Africa, in the middle of the continent. So it's much closer to the Middle East, for example. It's much closer to Europe. And I think their ability to put in new routes all over the continent will be far easier than for SAA. And they've been doing it a lot longer than SAA. So I think SAA really should watch out for this crowd.
So we've had a lot of restructuring at Kenya Airways, some staff being let go. They've just recently come out of a strike right now.
Yeah, and had a fairly significant rights issues, if I'm not mistaken. And as you can see, they're still relatively cheap, 4 PE. But again, you know, this is not an airline, it's an airline industry, so that's something not people have been loving. But I like Chris's argument, you know, location, because Kenya has export-driven fruit and vegetables to Europe, and then obviously they are a premier safari destination as well, and not only to Europe, but also to other places. So they don't perhaps have the same kind of internal market that we have here in South Africa, but certainly looks quite interesting. And I spoke to Larry Madowo, our ever, you know, quick with an answer East Africa host. He likes the stock, and he's not normally all that keen on, you know, stock stories. So I think it looks quite interesting, quite a good one to have a closer look at.
But thus far this year, it's one of the worst performing stocks on the NSE 20 right now. Kenya Airways.
I think with Kenya Airways, you've got to take the longer term view. You've got the commitment by that private-public partnership in there, and that's going to be rock solid. So I think, yes, short term might not be looking so wonderful. Longer term, I think it looks absolutely fantastic. They've
also got launching a jumbo jet. That's their low-cost airline.
Exactly. That's the thing that the guy on the radio was talking about. So they're launching a thing called Jumbo Jet, which is, I don't know, you know, got some nice resonances with it because of the Kenyan word jumbo, and then also the jumbo and all that. So sounds quite good. Again, though, I don't know. I mean, would you buy this one now? At least it's priced for an airline stock at 4 PE.
4 PE, it's cheap. And they're going to be one of the first airline in Africa to get the Boeing Dreamliner, the 787. They've got an order for 10 of them coming on next year. So the commitment is there without a shadow of a doubt.
So, Paul, hot or not?
Look, I mean, this whole industry gives me the heebie-jeebies. Even in markets like Europe and the US, even in the environment where you've got low-cost carriers that are quite well-run, it's not an easy neighborhood in which to make money, for the reason I mentioned earlier. So I'm going to go with not hot as well. But of all the stories one hears around Africa, this one's got some real appeal.
And looking at SAA, we just had the CEO resigning earlier today. What did you make of that, Chris?
SAA is obviously in severe turmoil. And unless and until that is that is cleared up, I think it's going to mean that companies like Kenya Airways have a much easier time with things, because it means their competitor is wounded at this point in time.
Look, I mean, somebody who actually worked for SAA told me once, a client of ours, that the fleet that SAA has is equivalent roughly to the fleet of Air Canada. But Air Canada at their head office building had 27 people, whereas at SAA they had something like 750. So that tells you something about the efficiencies that they're operating at and the relative scope for cost saving if it had the pressures of the market upon it. So we keep hearing about turnaround plans, but all we get is the same old, you know, oh dear, we need more money, we undercapitalized, blah, blah, blah. So unless the commercial forces are brought to bear on that player, it's going to pollute everything. And I'm not even sure that the way that they've set themselves up as a national carrier, that they're in fact being spectacularly successful at that.
So lots of trouble within
the lots of trouble in the sector, lots of trouble in the industry.
So you would be staying away from it right now?
Yeah, I mean, jokingly, if you were to ask me what my hot stock would be in this sector, I would say Google, because, you know, Google, you can go and buy the damn air ticket yourself.
But let's go back. I just want to get a hot or not on Kenya Airways, Chris.
I think it's hot, yes.
Yourself, Paul?
Me a pass, no, I'm going to avoid.
So one hot, one not for Kenya Airways.